It's time for the Bleed Los Podcast with your hosts, Alonso and Juan, Alicia Del Valle, and the babyface gimmick in the sky, Roger.
BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
And we are back with another episode of the Bleed Los Podcast, the weekly rewind edition of the Bleed Los Podcast. And joining us again on the show, you've seen him on here before. You've seen his work on Dodgers Beat, and that's Adrian Medina. Adrian, it's great to have you on. We have a lot of stuff to dig into. You know, it seems like the sky is falling apart in Dodgerland, but before we get into it, how are you doing? How have you been watching these Dodger games? Are you ready to pull your hair out yet?
Not ready yet, but man, it has not been exciting to say the least. I mean, I'm really trying to enjoy every Dodger game as of the last 2 weeks as much as I can, but man, it's really been a snooze fest over here.
Yeah, and we are recording this today a day late. For those of you who haven't known, it is a holiday weekend, 3-day weekend for most Americans, but we are celebrating Memorial Day. So before we kind of get into some Dodgers talk, do want to just say, here I fully recommend, and thank everybody that served, mourning everybody that served this country as well. There's a huge reason why, it's a big thing for baseball and how we celebrate it. So it's kind of unfortunate the Dodgers didn't get to play on Memorial Day. It seems like there's certain games throughout the year that I always try to at least attend or watch. Usually I'll try to go to Washington on the 4th of July game there. So it sucks that the LA didn't get to play today, but we like to pay our respects to those soldiers that have lost their lives to continue giving us this country's freedom. But let's get into some baseball talk, because it was a rough, past week for the Dodgers. And, last week on the live, we did talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks series. LA comes out with this, the series opening win. They look like they're going to get things rolling. D-backs are into town. They took care of business in Phoenix. Dodgers kind of fell flat in those last two games, and it didn't look good there. Couple things to take away from that. It was their first series loss to Arizona in LA since 2018. It was the first time getting shut out in a game against Arizona since 2017. So couple years of play between then and now, and the Dodgers kind of took that bad voodoo all the way to the Cincinnati series. But before we get into that, Adrian, let's get your thoughts. What did you see during that D-back series, and did you think it was a prelude to what the Dodgers were going to do in Cincinnati?
Like you said, they came out swinging, and obviously like how they won their previous series, winning the first game. I was going into it kind of confident, okay, it's the D-backs. We beat them before, we got it. But I think things started to really showcase in the last game, and especially in the shutout game too, where, I don't know, it felt like they weren't hitting when they were supposed to. Pitchers weren't supposed to be, giving up that many runs when they weren't supposed to. So it was a warning sign that I'm sure everyone just kind of glanced over, because they thought, oh, this happens, it's going to happen in a series. But they definitely did carry that to Cincinnati, I believe.
Yeah, it definitely, the vibes were bad the last two games of that series. However, I was still hopeful that, going to Cincinnati, going to Great America Ballpark, a hitter-friendly park, I thought the Dodgers offense was going to wake up a little bit, especially after getting, shocked in that final game of the series, getting shut out. And the complete opposite kind of happened. The first game of the Reds, it was an offensive back-and-forth game those first couple innings, but Dodgers kind of fell flat for the rest of the game, and then pretty much the rest of the series. They only scored one run, I believe, in that middle game, and then another one run the next game after that. So for the Dodgers, I think the big thing that they're struggling with, and we kind of touched on it last week during the live, is just their inability to hit with runners in scoring position. And it's just fascinating how big that can have an impact on the game, because there's other teams around baseball that are kind of middle in the pack, bottom in the pack, like the Baltimore Orioles were one that I compared the offense to, where you got a lot of sluggers on the team, but they're also a team that struggles with runners in scoring position, but they seem to be fine winning some ball games as well. What are you seeing kind of from the hitters when they have runners in scoring position? Do you feel like some of them are being pressed? Or last week during the live, I kind of felt that opposing teams' pitchers, they could still face our like top 4 guys and still get out of damage just because of how bad the bottom of the lineup continues to be.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like one thing that I brought up when I was talking with my dad about this was that they don't seem comfortable when there's runners on scoring position. Like if it's just Shohei Ohtani up with no one on, he can just hit, like God tier Ohtani style, right? But when it's everybody else, including Ohtani, with runners in scoring position, it feels like I don't know. They don't have the nicest of swings. They're looking at balls straight down the middle. I mean, they just lose complete focus when there's runners on scoring position. And for a lineup like this, you can't have that, and it's unacceptable. And I think the Reds pitchers kind of saw that game one after just that offensive performance they gave. So I feel like they really carried out a good game plan against the Dodgers, and I think other teams are going to be, piggybacking on top of that.
The Dodgers currently coming as we record this, they are currently ranked 18th in batting average with runners in scoring position, which is just a stat line that they have to improve on if they want to get better. And it's not just, the bottom of the order that was struggling with this. There was the whole thing was with Otani early in the season where it was like, this guy seems to be struggling with runners in scoring position. Throughout this entire series, they had a lot of hits that were robbed by, all-star defense by the Cincinnati Reds. It seems like a common theme I see with some teams when they play the Dodgers, that it seems like they turn into gold glovers, which, there may be a little bit of added, energy to their play because they are playing, an all-star lineup. So they want to show, showcase their skills as well. So it's something the Dodgers, they've always had to face. But, I think all the bad things came together in this series with the Reds, because not only did they not hit well for majority of the series, they didn't pitch well either. And even in those final 2 games, it seemed like their lack of command, consistency, some of our starters that we've known to go deeper into games, they just weren't able to execute. And, all around, the team just looked like they were outplayed by the Cincinnati Reds, which, if you told me that at the beginning of the season, I thought the Reds, this was like a fringe playoff team in 23. This is a team I think is going to take a step forward this season. But they haven't really been having a really good season at all this year. They've been hit by the injury bug. Their offense was like ranked in the bottom 5th of the league in terms of offense, and their pitching. They're in the mend of throwing at least 2 bullpen games a week. They threw 1 in this series. They threw 1 in last series when they were in LA. And it just seems like when the Dodgers come there, they end up, firing on all cylinders. Jonathan India enters the series with an 0 for 16 skid, and then ends up waking his bat, having a 3 for 4 night, getting that grand slam, sealing it pretty much for the Reds that day.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like the Dodgers couldn't counter it. And I don't know if, they're just probably in a funk right now. I don't know if the sky's falling. But, Adrian, you look at this series and you look at who they're going to play next week in the next couple days with the Mets. Are you feeling, down on the team? Like, do you think they're going to rebound, or do you think this is something that's going to go on for the next week or 2?
I feel like, of course, they are in a skid right now. I've kind of determined that, I think, game 2 of the series, of the Red series, honestly. But, I feel like today was a godsend type of day. It rained out in New York. They just need a day to just reset. And I know they had the last previous off day before. But then again, teams go through funks, especially the Dodgers. I feel like that's just their cloud that they've always, tried to escape, but always catches up to them. But, I mean, going into these next series and then going home for this weekend against Colorado, I feel like they can finally make a push now in New York to finally rev the engines up back again and go to their winning ways like they were a few weeks ago, for sure.
Yeah, and then just kind of looking back at the last 15 games for the Dodgers, they have not been playing good baseball. They have a record under 500 at 7-8. However, they're going to a New York team that is probably struggling worse than than the Dodgers are. Even their own broadcasters are having a hard time just even showing up to the game, and just I'm friends with a couple of Mets fans since I'm on the East Coast, so I kind of know what they're going through right now. They've pretty much given up on the season. They have like no hope. But a part of me says, the Dodgers are going to go in there, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers, for some reason, end up dropping 2 or 3 to them. It seems like the past couple years, the Mets have played the Dodgers pretty well, and I could still see that, happening this upcoming series. However, the big thing for me is that I think they will benefit from having an off day today when we're recording. Get that extra travel day, get that extra time to recuperate, get that extra time to plan ahead and how you're going to attack this New York Mets team. Because even though they are struggling, I believe they have like a 10-20 record over their last 30 games. They are absolutely reeling right now. They still have a lot of good baseball players on their team. I believe they have some pitchers coming back this week. They're always going to play the Dodgers tough. But before we move on to the next thing, the injury bug. And the Dodgers have had some players that are on the injury list right now that are rehabbing and coming back. And that's the other thing I want to talk about today is we've had 2 players on Sunday go on rehab assignments beginning them, and that's Bobby Miller and Evan Phillips. And Adrian, how big is it for the Dodgers to get one or not even just both of these guys back in the next week or 2?
Oh yeah, it's big. Especially I think Evan Phillips. I mean, he looked great. His rehab his stint with the Quakes, and especially Bobby Miller too. I mean, they look like they're ready to come back, and better late, better. It's a good time for them to come back. I mean, right now it would be awesome, but I mean, they can take their time coming back. I feel like, we need them at 100%, and I feel like they are 100%. They feel like it, but yeah, once they come back, it'll be super beneficial.
Yeah, and then if anyone did miss it, they both made their rehab start on Sunday. Evan Phillips looked phenomenal in his inning pitched. He went 1 inning, 2 strikeouts, flawless, scoreless inning for him. He's probably more than likely returning before Bobby Miller. Miller, who's been out since April, I assume he's going to get at least 2 more rehab assignments at minimum. He looked a little bit, he had an up and down start. He gave up multiple runs, gave up a few hits, but he was still hitting 99, 100 miles per hour on the radar gun. And the big thing with him, even though he did give up, he didn't get the results he may have been looking for, he came out of it healthy. And this is also a theme I've seen with a lot of pitchers that are starting to rehab back. While they want their stuff to be perfect, they also just want to be healthy in the process. Because Miller, he had the Chris Taylor home run in the live ABs at the other day as well. So, and then in his Arizona League sim game, he gave up a home run to a minor leaguer there as well. So I feel like he's a little bit further away, probably maybe talking about June. Evan Phillips is probably I would say a week away from being activated. He'll probably get one more appearance in the minor leagues and then be activated right after that. But they're definitely a big part of this Dodgers team because you put one in the rotation that fills in your rotation, gives you much more added depth there. But Evan Phillips, the bullpen was one of the things that struggled the most in Cincinnati, where it seemed like a lot of guys were just struggling with command. Are you worried about the bullpen even when Evan Phillips comes back, or are you saying, all right, let's get some of these guys coming back from the injury list? Because it's not just Evan Phillips. We're missing Gratterall still. We're missing Joe Kelly. We're missing Brazier. We're missing Phillips. Are you just kind of in a wait-and-see mode until you start judging the bullpen?
I'm kind of in a wait-and-see mode, honestly. I mean, half the guys that we needed in the bullpen are on the IL, so it's like kind of, I would guess, say unfair at this point to critique the bullpen. But then again, I am on the let's wait and see. Once Phillips comes back, hopefully, they get to turn the mojo a little bit with him returning and seeing him do good, and hopefully that sparks the plug and all the other arms currently in the bullpen. But yeah, right now I'm waiting and seeing on it. It's frustrating, seeing the bullpen play, especially like how they did in Cincy. But I mean, they're kind of running on one arm basically.
Yeah, and I know it's frustrating for Dodger fans to see, a short game, 3-game series against the Reds where pretty much everything fell apart. They still are top 3 in ERA for relief pitching. They're right underneath the Yankees and the Guardians with a 3.25, and that's with the mix of arms that they've kind of accumulated this entire season, and whether it's getting guys through trades for cash or guys that have been DFA'd, released. They're making it work with what they got, and they do have a lot of arms that are on the injured list right now that are going to come back eventually. Some sooner than others. Gratterall is still like, I would say probably weeks away. He just began his throwing program. Brazier, he was kind of put on, they're saying maybe like a month or two where he still has to work his way back, hasn't even thrown off a mound yet. But they're getting, the job done with the guys they have. It just seemed like this short series, it just didn't work out. But I'm still confident in the bullpen. I'm still confident in the pitching staff, even though there was a little hiccup in this, the road trip so far. But I also think another thing people need to remember is that Great American Ballpark is a hitter-friendly park. That is notoriously known for being a hitter-friendly park. Unfortunately, the Dodgers didn't get the memo on that, especially in those last two games. But it is one of those parks that is known for, giving up the long ball and the increasing your slugging percentage.
Yeah.
Other than that, all this stuff can be found on the website. Steve Webb did a great job updating on the Miller start, on the Evan Phillips, relief appearance, and all these videos are available on the Bleed Lows Podcast YouTube channel. So be sure to check those out if you want to see the interviews with Miller and Phillips after their rehab start. That's where you want to check them out. Moving on to some more injury news. Ohtani is dealing with something with his hamstring. We wrote about it on Dodgers Beat today. But, Adrian, are you worried on his injury status at all? Even though Ohtani himself, tempered down our worries with it, saying he's fine. But is it something that you're going to want to watch?
Definitely. I mean, anything involving a hamstring, it's just, you never know. You could feel fine one day, and then the next day, you can't even move. Can't even move your hamstring. So, I mean, if he feels fine, Ohtani won't lie to the people. So I'm sure that he's fine. But I mean, definitely giving him, some days rest, wouldn't hurt. I mean, I think he needs that. And especially, it was kind of concerning when he hit that triple and he was just jogging it like that. I don't think many people caught it when they first saw it. I was immediately kind of, alarm bells are ringing like, okay, this could be a leg injury, something. But no, I'm not concerned as much as, other people were. I just believe like a few days rest should do the trick, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things that most players sustain on the course of a 162-game season. You're going to get those little injuries there. Your hamstrings are going to tighten up a little bit. And even though he is a DH and he's not pitching this year, he's still running the bases. He's still, getting on base. He still has to run around the bases when the ball is put in play. So, and he's going to be doing that every single day or most times than not. So I think the Dodgers, they're a smart organization. They know how to handle these injuries well. They usually like to get ahead of them when they can, when it's early. I feel like if it was something that they believe it was going to be more serious in the next week or so, they would have shut him down, put him on the IL, gave him extra rest days. I think it is the added benefit that he is a DH, that he can rehab a little bit better because he doesn't have to go out, and play the field like some of these other players have to do. Like they're dealing with some, hamstring tightness running the bases. All right, well, now you got to go in the outfield and start running after some fly balls. That's where you can start seeing, the injury progressively get worse over the couple games or a couple weeks. With Ohtani, obviously the Dodgers need this guy to be healthy. They need to have him in the lineup more times than not. But I'm also in agreeing with you. I don't think it's going to be something serious, but it is going to be something to watch in the next couple of games or series. He was slated to play today until the rainout happened. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the doubleheader. I know he's a DH, but maybe do they give him a day off or a game off instead of playing, back-to-back games on the same day? That'll be something to look forward to tomorrow. If you're the Dodgers, do you just try to get him as much rest as you can this week, or if he says he's ready to go, you just give him all the starts?
Even if he says he's ready, I would give him, I would say, the first game off tomorrow on the doubleheader. Just early game, just take that game off. It's fine. No matter what result of the game is, he could just take the second game of the doubleheader and just move on with the rest of the week. I think that's what I would do.
Yeah, and like I said, we wrote about this on Dodgers Beat. Go ahead and check it out on the website as well. Another injury concern that I kind of want to bring up to you, Adrian, that I haven't seen many people talk about is it seems like Max Muncy's injury, it was an oblique injury. Dave Roberts, Max Muncy himself, they didn't really express too much, concern over it. Dave Roberts even said that it maybe could be a week or two thing, and then he could be back in the lineup. Now we're starting to kind of see the other side of the story where it sounds like, Muncy's still feeling some discomfort. He still hasn't really swung a bat too much. And, the longer you miss, the more time it's going to take for you to come back. And he's more than likely going to have to go on a rehab assignment. And like I said, he hasn't even swung a bat yet. He really hasn't been doing baseball activities. He's been doing fielding work, but he hasn't really swung, which is where he's really getting this discomfort, which is shown because before he went on the IL, he had a batting average under 200 in that like 20 game or 15 game sample size. So obviously it was something that was affecting his his hitting ability. Are you concerned if Muncy may be missing more time than what we originally thought?
When I found out that it was an oblique injury, it's just like a hamstring. It's very 50-50 on, how you feel in the present time when you announce the injury, because it could obviously over time get worse, and like, yeah, as you said, no one was talking about, gradually. We all just took Robert's word on it that, yeah, he'll be back soon. But even with that, I was kind of like, okay, this is going to be quite a while, but I didn't think it was going to be as severe as as it's been coming up. I think Muncy still needs to just take his time with everything. An oblique is a very delicate muscle, especially in a swinging deficit, and definitely it's something to obviously still keep in mind. And I feel like a lot of Dodger fans aren't really talking about it as much when it's a very highly anticipated thing, because it's Max Muncy, and how he was to start the season and how he's been producing. But even then again, you could tell that the oblique injury has been, affecting him a bunch even before he announced it. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure if he just takes his time, I know he'll recover soon, but I think we're not going to get him anytime soon. That's just how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, when I first saw the report of the injury saying that it was an oblique, I kind of my eyes opened a little bit because if you look at oblique injuries in the past, that could make or break a guy's season. Whether if it's too late in the year, he may not come back at all, or when he does come back, he just doesn't look right at all. And Muncy, we're at that point where we're almost reaching the mid part of the year, and if it's something that's going to linger and keep him on the IL, it's just going to take longer for this guy to get back on track, which prior to this injury, he looked really sharp. He had, that multiple home run game. He was hitting the ball well, actually hitting with average, getting on base still. And he is a big piece in the Dodgers lineup, and would be a reason why I think they're struggling right now is because, Kike Hernandez isn't giving the same production as Max Muncy. And, as much as Dodger fans love Kike and what he does for the team, he doesn't have, the OPS numbers, the slugging numbers, and just the pure, prowess of hitting over, and playing third base. That's probably the only thing he probably does better is defensively. Yeah. Kike is sound wherever you put him, but hitting wise, that's something that the Dodgers, if Muncy's going to be out for an extended period of time, that they may have to address. We'll get into it in a minute, but this bench, it just seems like it's not getting the job done. And when you start taking away your starters, and Muncy is a starter, you start to see some of the, the holes and the cracks in the foundation in this Dodgers team. So yeah. I'm curious to see if he does miss an extended time, if the Dodgers trying to make a move. I know there's a lot of minor league guys that they can choose from, but we've already seen, Miguel Vargas come up, and he hasn't really done much either in his second stint in the big league. So I'm curious to see what they'll do, but it is a little concerning when Muncy's continue to get pushed off because, like I said, those oblique injuries, you said it yourself, 50-50. They could be extremely severe or they could just be mild, and they could just – I know it's going to linger for him for probably the majority of the year until he gets a full – break and not trying to come back. So it'll be something to watch for sure. But, the Dodgers, they know how to handle injuries well. I just can never seem to trust them when they give us updates on injury information. Yeah. That's just one thing I've known of my, 10-plus years of watching this team so far. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. Moving on, the bottom of the order. Brought it up a little bit. They still are struggling. There's still holes in the lineup. They sent down James Outman, the other week. Jason Hayward gets activated. He hasn't really done much since coming back besides that home run he hit in his first game back. What are they going to do to like solve this problem? Because it just seems like there's so many holes on the bench. There's so many holes that are leaking in the bottom of the order that's affecting the team as a whole. And I know you wrote an article on Dodgers Beat possibly bringing up one solution. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I brought up, and I know this was even a preseason thing beforehand, before I even joined Dodgers Beat, I agreed with it totally to bring Bo Bichette on the team. And now everyone was looking at me like, oh, how would that possibly work? Because, this lineup is top head from 1 through 9. I mean, they're going to be dominant. But even then, when you see that bottom of the lineup, I kind of was like, if they don't produce, I mean, the Dodgers are obviously going to do something, because that, the 1 through 9 is basically, I saw it as like they're like a dam. And now as the season goes on, the wear and tear of the season, I mean, there's cracks happening, like little leakage everywhere. I mean, eventually all of that's just going to crumble, and it starts with the 7 through 9 hitters. So, I mean, I just suggested that Bo Bichette come in as a more stable ground, like he can really provide, some good defense and some good offense just for one player. And I mean, I'm not saying completely Bo Bichette is the answer and he is the reason that the Dodgers will be the 2024 champions, but I am saying that Bo Bichette could be, the foundation to bring this lineup, together and for a full length of the next, couple hundred games we still have left.
Yeah, Bo Bichette's very interesting because, the Blue Jays entering this year, they were supposed to be in contention. And right now, as we speak, they're last place in the American League East. They don't look good at all. Even some of the guys that got off to hot starts, including, former Dodger Justin Turner, they've kind of fallen back to earth. Vlad, Jr. hasn't really looked like his, 2019 self in a very long time, or that 2021 season that he had. And they have a lot of, problems in the pitching department. George Springer isn't hitting. It just seems like collectively the Blue Jays just aren't firing on all cylinders. And while it may not be their year this year, they're also running out of, their window, because the reason why Bo Bichette's name comes up and has been a name that the Dodgers have had circled since the winter meetings is because these guys are about to become free agents. Vlad and Bo Bichette are free agents in about a year and a half. And the Blue Jays, they don't really like to shell out a lot of money. They showed a lot of interest in Otani, but that's because he was the unicorn player. At the end of the day, they may have to choose between one or the other in terms of Vlad versus Bichette. And if a team is willing to trade and give you a high, interest trade package, the Blue Jays may bite at it, especially if they've fallen so far out of playoff contention. I know it's a little bit harder now to fall completely out of playoff contention because of how the playoffs are now, where I think even though the Blue Jays are last place, they're like 4.5, 5 games out of a wild card spot. So theoretically, they are still in the race as much as anybody in the American League. So it makes it a little harder. The other thing is that the Blue Jays, their GM said, yeah, we're open to listening to these guys, but our price is astronomically high. And I don't know if the Dodgers are necessarily are willing to, overpay for, what Bo Bichette has brought production-wise this year. He has not looked like himself. His defense is slightly above what Mookie Betts is bringing to the table, but his hitting is just nowhere near what Betts is bringing in as a production at shortstop. So maybe that's just a change of scenery that he needs. The Dodgers, like I said, they've shown interest before. Could you see realistically the Dodgers kind of, offloading some of these pieces to get Bo Bichette? Who do you think the Dodgers would, ultimately let go in a trade for Bo Bichette?
What I said in my article was that I said that they should trade Lux, a package deal with Lux and 2 of their top 10 pitching prospects, just because I feel like adding the pitching prospects are kind of like the majority deal, because the Jays need pitching. And I mean, this year was supposed to be their most contending year. And, with them kind of falling short, like, yes, we still are in the early seasons, we still are in the early parts of the season, they're not really showcasing that they can make it far. And even, they're possibly going to be out of playoff contention in like August or September. So, I mean, might as well. And I feel like for Blue Jays fans, just to accept that they can get the most out of Vlad or Bo right now than anything, and not wait till next year when their contract is up. And I feel like the Dodgers should pull the trigger now before the Blue Jays want something even more than what they could possibly offer. And, I feel like right now is the time to really, get the trade talks going.
Yeah, and this is my favorite time of the year when you start pushing to June and then July rolls around. The trade deadline's always very fun. A lot of our ideas and our topics and our opinions get brought to light on the website. So if you haven't checked out Adrian's article, go ahead and check out that. It sheds a lot of light into, the Dodgers' need for a middle infielder, how it could plug in the bottom of the order, and also just, the type of player Bo Bichette is. I feel like he would mend really well with this group of guys that we have this season, and was definitely a name that I had on my radar at the beginning of the season as well. And I would 100% be on board with the Dodgers, going forward with the trade for Bo Bichette, because in the shortstop market, if you're one of those Dodger fans that believes that they need a shortstop and you're not okay with Betts playing shortstop full time and you want to move him either back to right field or back to second base, there's literally probably only two options, and that's either Willy Adames, who's on a Brewers team that's currently winning their division, or Bo Bichette, who's on a team that's currently last in their division. More than likely, I'm going to say Willy Adames is staying in Milwaukee just because of what they've done. He'll go ahead and test free agency as well, so maybe he comes to the Dodgers next season. But I'm still leaning that the Dodgers probably continue with Betts for the entire year. It's short. I'm very interested to see how the trade market plays out this year, just because of what I mentioned. So many teams believe they're in contention. You had last year an 84 win team in the National League win the NL pennant. You had an 89 win Phillies team do it the year before that. This new playoff format, an 84, 83 win team, if they can get into the postseason, that's all that matters. So I feel like a lot more teams will, stand pack, go with what they got. But it's just time will tell, But yeah. I wouldn't be saying no to Bo Bichette. He's one of my favorite players to watch, and he surely brings some electric energy to the team. And something that definitely needs electric energy is the team right now as they go to play the New York Mets. Obviously, at the top of the show, we mentioned how they had to flex some of the games. So tomorrow, or when this episode is live today, they will be playing 2 games on a doubleheader, 9-inning doubleheaders. If nobody can remember, they play full 9 innings, not those 7-inning COVID doubleheaders. What are your expectations for this series against the New York Mets? I already mentioned that the Mets are reeling. The Dodgers are also in a funk right now. Kind of is an interesting series to have 2 struggling teams to go at each other because, the Mets, their ambition is to possibly make the playoffs. The Dodgers, it's the complete, opposite. It's to not only make the playoffs, but win 100-plus games, make it to the World Series and all that. So what are you looking for the Dodgers to do this series, and what do you believe the outcome is?
Well, I feel like everyone should look at this as kind of like a new light series, It's, all right, we're done with Cincy. Let's just move on, turn a page, get an off day, technically a free off day today, and just really analyze, who we're playing. So we're playing the Mets. I feel like this could come out really good for the Dodgers, even if they take 2 out of 3, completely. I feel like it'll be a good momentum shift as they finally come back home and play the Rockies, who are also struggling as well. And, they could really capitalize on the 2 next series of these struggling teams. But if it's the complete opposite and we have, the Mets completely surprise us, I mean, that's just kind of going to open the window for everyone to outside talk and just say like, all right, something needs to be done with the Dodgers like now. And, like what's their issues, this and that. So I feel like there's 2 completely different roads, a sunny road and a very, very dark road. And, me personally, I feel very confident, that the Dodgers can beat the Mets. I feel very confident they can beat the Rockies as well. So I'm really going into this week very optimistic and, just really, really hoping for the best.
Yeah, I'm going to share that sentiment with you. I'm going to go in confidently. They got a doubleheader tomorrow. I believe those are always 50-50, but usually the team if you can get that game 1 win, and then if their Dodgers are going to go with like, it depends on how they go into it. Are they going to have like an A lineup one game and a B lineup the next game? Or are they going to go A lineup, and then maybe B lineup for the last game of the series? Really depends. If they go, the B lineup first game, A lineup second game, I could see them, if they can sneak away that, whatever game they do the like lesser team, if they can sneak away with a win like that, the way the pitching lines up, I could see them sweeping the series. You get Tyler Glasnow, you get Gavin Stone. Those are two of your most dependable starters. And then you get James Paxton on the final game on Wednesday. He hasn't been too bad. That Red Series, he struggled with the walks a little bit again, but he was looking really good in his last 3 starts. Glasnow, he was flat out dominant against the Mets his last time out. He kind of got the Dodgers, he actually kind of set the stage when they were on their last struggles, and he was the guy that got them their win and then got them their mojo back, and then they went on winning baseball from April 21st or something out. So I could see them, sweeping this series. It'll be interesting just because I feel like the Mets play the Dodgers pretty well. The Mets took 2 of 3 in LA already this year, but the Mets, there's just some funk going on in New York right now, and I don't want to say LOL Mets, but I'm hoping I'm getting some LOL Mets this weekend because I really think the Dodgers need at least a series win. I'm not going to go anything less than that, but I would very much like to see a sweep.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, and as you mentioned, like Tyler Glasnow started that whole domino effect of the Dodgers really, starting their winning ways. I mean, it just basically writes itself. We'll see how that game goes with him, but I'm sure he feels it, and he realizes that it's going to start with him to really get, the winning streak going, and it's going to start with his start.
Yeah, I believe it. It should kick off with Glasnow, and hopefully he sets the, stage. That way the team can follow his lead. Gavin Stone goes in game 2, and then James Paxton, hopefully he can finish out strong in this series as well. But that'll about do it for this episode of the Bleed Lows podcast, the weekly rewind edition. Dodgers have been playing pretty bad baseball as of late, but we hope that they right the ship this week coming up. And they begin a 3-game set with the Mets. They have a doubleheader as the time this episode will drop, and then immediately return home to face 3 against the Colorado Rockies, which I think is a great lineup of schedule to get your team back on track. But like we talked about in this episode, the big thing is the runners in scoring position. So hopefully they can correct that, and we'll see some winning baseball. But I'm Cody Snavely. That's Adrian Medina. Like I said, you guys can check out all of our work on Dodgers Beat. Check out all the player interviews and all the stuff we've covered on the Bleed Lows podcast channel. Like I mentioned, I'll plug it again. We were there in Rancho covering, the Bobby Miller start and the Evan Phillips appearance. So we got all those videos up for you guys right now. So be sure to, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and we'll see you for this week's live.
This episode has been brought to you by BetOnline. The game starts here.